I had a uncle who I was very close with that passed away during that time, and that was a big motivating factor for me. And then kind of more on the lower end looking back, but back then it was a big impact on me, having this one girlfriend that I had break up with me. I just wanted to rub it in her face and try to make it. And
yeah, so you took it and you lit the fire inside, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to that 100%. 150%, man.
Yeah, no, with TV and paying for licensing, I guess they only had the licensing cleared for certain songs, and so it was a very cutthroat process. And I got cut for a short period of time, and I think this is just, I didn't even want to dive too deep into this, but I have a feeling like with your group of listeners, a story like this would resonate. I was cut, and I was turning around, walking away from this microphone, walking away from the panel of judges. They're getting ready to call the next person in. I'm like, I can't walk out of this room right now. I'm like, I just have this clear memory looking down at my feet, and it was just like, my brain wasn't controlling my feet to walk. They were just walking, and then I just stopped, and I was like, I'm not leaving this room without trying something. And I turn around, and so Lorianne Gibson is like a very, very tough choreographer. I think she ended up going on to work with Justin Bieber in the years after making the band. She's very, very tough, almost like a drill sergeant. And I turn around, she's like, dude, leave, take your L like a man, take your loss like a man. And I was like, I can't. And I grabbed the microphone off the stand, and I just started singing something. I don't even remember what, because they weren't able to air it. And Mike Bibbins was like, let him sing, let the man sing. And I just sang. I went up, my hands are shaking. I went up, I like put my hand through Lorianne Gibson's hair. I don't even know where this came from. And the whole panel of judges were like looking at each other, and they're like, you know what, we want to give this kid a second chance. And I ended up.
And welcome to the Apex Lifestyles Podcast. I'm your host, Bob GDMD, and I'm here as always with my co-host,
Dennis Vee. What's going on today, Bob?
Hey, you know what, Dennis? Big day today, bud.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah, right? Happy birthday, my friend.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So I don't know if you want to do this. Do you want to share it with the listeners? Like, what's the big day? What's the big number?
Today is 52. I'd like to say 52 is a new 30. I feel good. It's been a great year, and many amazing things have happened, including all that's happened here, and a lot of great things to share the next year, and let's keep things moving.
Nice. So, you know what, Dennis? We have a really cool guest here today.
The best.
For all you people that used to watch MTV back in the day, the reality shows, you'll know exactly who we're talking about. And Dennis, why don't you introduce him in?
First of all, I had the pleasure of connecting with this guest, I'd probably say 7 or 8 years ago. Donnie Klang, who won Making the Band 4, was signed by P. Diddy to a contract. Donnie at the time was working with a group that was really rising the Janes and doing some serious work with them. At the event, it was, I remember it was Marky Ramone from the Ramones, which is pretty an Andy Hill figure. And Donnie and I connected, had some great vibes, and it still continues to this day. Donnie Klang, welcome to the show.
Yeah,
welcome,
man.
Donnie.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Bob. Happy birthday, Dennis. I didn't even really realize that going into this. That's like crazy timing when we texted last week. I feel like I threw out today's date, so the chances of that is crazy. It's insane.
You know what? And you know what? This is a great gift today to be on talking and making this happen. Really excited about this.
Yeah, awesome. Happy birthday, man.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, happy birthday, Dennis. And maybe later on before we sign off, we'll have Donnie serenade you a little bit with a happy birthday.
There we go.
So Donnie, let me you're bringing right out of that, right? So let's go back. 2007, I think it was, right? Is that Making the Band 4? Can you take us?
Yeah.
Can you take the listeners back to before Making the Band? Right? What was Donnie's life like? 2006, and walk us through, how did you end up, on Making the Band?
Right. Yeah. 6 was definitely a darker year for me. It was like I had sang in groups all through high school, and we had a couple big things that almost happened for us. We had so I sang with a bunch of buddies in high school, one who I actually now own my business with. But rewind back to back then, we were singing in a group. This is pre-YouTube, pre-social media. Computers were still pretty new, so we were kind of just learning and growing with technology, learning how to songwrite, learning how to engineer and produce and do everything on our own. One of our band members, Matt, he built a studio in his parents' basement, and we just kind of started developing ourselves without realizing we were developing ourselves. So this is going back actually more like 99, 2000, and we were a boy band. This was around those boy band days, NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, and we just were developing ourselves, and we had to actually go out to try to get fans. So we couldn't just film videos and post it. We had to go to malls or bowling alleys or amusement parks and just start singing a cappella to try to get fans. So we were out one time at a local mall over here, Roosevelt Field Mall, and there used to be CD stores for any younger people watching where they sold
Very
physical
foreign.
CDs. Yes. And we went to an in-store CD signing performance. There was this small girl group there. Their name was Play. And we just started singing, and the crowd there was probably like 75 people in the store, and all of these girls just started focusing on us. And when the group came out, they weren't focusing on them. So the group's manager came out from backstage, and he at first was kind of yelling at us, and then he pulls us backstage, and long story short, it was Matthew Knowles, Beyonce's dad, was the manager of that girl group. And he had us backstage.
What was the luck of that, man?
Yeah, crazy. And then
Right?
that was
That's like the universe setting you up, man.
Man, I believe it. Now in my older age, I try to speak things into existence and, positive mentality, affirmations. I think back then we kind of did it without realizing we were doing it. And we ran into him the next morning. We're all under 18, so we're all minors. Our parents, all 5 of us with all of our parents, are in the city. We're in Sony, and we're talking about record deals. And so from a young age, we kind of started having some interactions in the business. So we were signed to him for a couple years. Nothing big obviously ever came from it, but we did have a lot of experiences. And then I was in those
learning at that point, right?
Yeah, I was in those groups, and it was a weird time for us. I graduated high school in 2003. So now here we are. We're signed to Matthew Knowles. Are we doing anything? Are we not? He's saying we're going to get homeschooled. One of the kids started with a homeschool teacher that was in our group. The rest of us continued. Now our parents are like, okay, college, no college, what are we doing? Are we giving you guys a year off? Some of the parents didn't want to give us any time off. So it was just a lot of craziness and ups and downs. And then after Matthew Knowles, we had a bunch of, some of them sharks that just came out of the water, and some people genuine, some boxing promoters that wanted to invest in us or help us or connect us with stuff. And we went through kind of like a runaround.
Don King coming up and trying to sign boy bands at this point?
Seriously, it was a wannabe Don King that we dealt with for a while, and it was crazy. It was a lot of great experiences and amazing. I mean, for me, I guess the development and just like the network of people I met and everything I was able to learn from those experiences. But in the end, nothing happened. In 2006 is where everything kind of just hit an all-time low for me. I tried out for American Idol. I got cut right before the TV airing part of it. I went back to school, and then I wasn't even able to continue the schooling because I lost my scholarship for dropping out the previous time when we were dealing with one of our managers. And so it was a rough time. My mom was losing her job. I was living with her as a single parent from apartment to apartment, and it was just, we hit this like all-time low that we could hit. And that was 2006. And then in January of 2007, I finally made it back in. I went back to Hofstra. I wrote a long letter about how I pursued my dream. Very professional. I learned a lot. I think I'll be able to apply some of my experiences to my future. Hofstra, and I said I can't afford this school. I live in an apartment with a single parent. And they let me back in, and they gave me my scholarship back. And that was in January. And then February was the Making the Band audition. So I ended up having to drop out again, but it kind of worked out.
I'd say it worked out, right? Sometimes that stuff happens.
Donnie, there was just hearing, what happened in that year, there were many opportunities for you to hit the quit button. And, whether it be school, whether it be, chasing your dream as a musician. And what kept you moving?
I mean, I had a few motivations, living with a single parent and watching her struggle between her jobs and how many times we moved. And my dad was always actively in my life. My dad got remarried when I was young, and I have 3 half-sisters who I don't even consider half-sisters. I probably never even said that my whole life. They're full sisters to me. 2 of them actually ended up working at the Loft. One of them is my life savior right now. She manages our whole studio here. So they were always in my life, but even my dad was a boiler man struggling in New York, trying to raise a family. And so my family was a big motivating factor for me. I had a uncle who I was very close with that passed away during that time, and that was a big motivating factor for me. And then kind of more on the lower end looking back, but back then it was a big impact on me, having this one girlfriend that I had break up with me. I just wanted to rub it in her face and try to make it. And
so you took it and you lit the fire inside, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to that 100%. 150%, man.
So then take us through Making the Band 4. You went to the audition. Can you take us from there?
Yeah, so Making the Band 4, for anybody that doesn't know the show, the first season was O-Town, and it actually wasn't ran by P. Diddy. I think it was ran by Lou Pearlman, or I know it was on ABC when it first came out, and that first group became O-Town. So that was late 90s, early 2000s, and then Making the Band kind of just fell off, and then P. Diddy took over the whole brand of Making the Band. So there was Making the Band Season 2, Diddy put together a rap group. Making the Band Season 3, Diddy put together Danity Kane, an all-girl female group. And then Making the Band Season 4, he was scouring the country to try to put together a boy band or R&B group. So I went to the audition. I live in New York, obviously, so I went to Manhattan and went to the first open call. The first day, back then, I had a MySpace music page, and somebody submitted my MySpace page. I still have no idea who to this day. It might have been my mom. It might have been one of our fans of our group that we used to sing in. And I won the contest to cut the line the first day of the Making the Band audition. So I went there, I cut the line, I sang 2 lines.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Back up a little bit. Tell us about the competition to cut the line. So does that mean like there's this long line of people to audition and you want a competition to jump ahead? Like you got a fast pass? Is that what that was?
Fast pass, basically.
All right, that's cool.
And I'm getting dirty looks from all these people as I'm walking in front of this whole line. And you're also talking about New York. So these guys are like hardcore. I'm getting like more than dirty looks as I'm walking past this line. And I make it to the front. And I want to say there was probably like 10,000 people in line. So some of the people in the back might not even have had a chance to audition, because I don't even know how long the day went that first day. But whatever happened that first day, I went in. I was one of the first. I think I was one of like 3 or 4 that won this contest to cut the line. I go in, and Mike Bivens from New Edition was the judge that I first met that first day. And I sang a line or 2, and he was like, "You're good, man. You're good. Come back tomorrow for the callbacks." So now I went from feeling like the man. I cut the line, barely had to sing, made it through. And now this next day, they narrowed down that 10,000 to about 80 people. And I walk in this room, and these guys are like hardcore R&B singers that grew up singing in churches, riffing their faces off, low notes to high notes. And I'm just sitting there like, my God, what am I doing? Now it's the cream of the crop. And I was just, I felt maybe like I was outclassed or I just felt so out of my element. I also was very used to singing in groups. So a lot of the times you're singing harmonies with people, or you're able to kind of disguise stuff with your group or pass on the torch to the next guy for the next verse. So it was brutal, and I went in that second day, and now I'm with the full panel of judges. So this panel was the R&B singer Joe. They had this famous vocal coach. They had Lorianne Gibson, who's a famous choreographer. Mike Bivins was there again. A bunch of people like that. And I go in, and the song that I had sang a cappella day one wasn't cleared for the show. So now they give you this list of like 5 songs you have to choose from. And I didn't really know the songs, so I picked the one I was most familiar with, and I sang a couple lines, and they were like, no,
so,
man,
Donnie,
no.
Let's talk about, sorry to interrupt you, man, but I want to get clarity on that. So there's a list of songs. Were you playing with a band? Was there a live band? Is that why you had to have the song picked out from their list?
They had tracks. They had tracks at the audition. The first day.
I see. So
this first couple days, it was tracks, yeah.
So they had like a bunch of tracks set up, and you had to pick one of those so that you could have the backing for it and all that. Okay, I got you.
Yeah. And then with TV,
sorry, I didn't mean that.
Yeah, no, with TV and paying for licensing, I guess they only had the licensing cleared for certain songs, and so it was a very cutthroat process. And I got cut for a short period of time, and I think this is I didn't even want to dive too deep into this, but I have a feeling like with your group of listeners, a story like this would resonate. I was cut, and I was turning around, walking away from this microphone, walking away from the panel of judges. They're getting ready to call the next person in. I'm like, I can't walk out of this room right now. I'm like, I just have this clear memory looking down at my feet, and it was just like my brain wasn't controlling my feet to walk. They were just walking, and then I just stopped. And I was like, I'm not leaving this room without trying something. And I turn around, and so Lorianne Gibson is like a very, very tough choreographer. I think she ended up going on to work with Justin Bieber in the years after making the band. She's very, very tough, almost like a drill sergeant. And I turn around, she's like, dude, leave, take your L like a man, take your loss like a man. And I was like, I can't. And I grabbed the microphone off the stand, and I just started singing something. I don't even remember what, because they weren't able to air it. And Mike Bivins was like, let him sing, let the man sing. And I just sang. I went up, my hands are shaking. I went up, I like put my hand through Lorianne Gibson's hair. I don't even know where this came from. And the whole panel of judges were like looking at each other, and they're like, you know what, we want to give this kid a second chance. And I ended up getting the yes from that point, and then I made it onto the show after that.
I mean, that's a big deal,
that's
man.
Crazy.
Isn't that crazy? Like, the fact that how old were you at that time?
I was 21 years old back then.
Yeah, so maybe that was bravado of a young dude, but like
serious persistence.
And I wasn't like that at all. It was not my personality type to do stuff like that. If anything, I was more shy and reserved, and so
that's amazing, man. Thanks for sharing that, because I don't think a lot of people probably know that if they were around watching the show then, and that's a testament to like.
It never aired too. It's because the song wasn't cleared, so that whole moment never. Yeah, it's like almost like an unspoken story.
Yeah, that's so cool though. Like, I love the fact that you were just like, nope, this is it. You got to hear me, right?
That's awesome. That's an exclusive right there. That's a news exclusive.
Yeah.
The other side of it, it's almost like Eminem says, you have one shot. You took the shot.
Yeah.
You took the shot. That's
and
incredible.
I remember it was like almost like a near-death experience. I remember like hundreds of thoughts flashing into my brain, like, my mom just lost her job. I'm working in this warehouse. I hated this place. I'm working in a warehouse. I just went back to school, and now it had been 4 years since I was in school, and it's so hard to regain that school focus mentality, and I was so out of it, and I had this dream, especially back then. I was young. I was so passionate about this dream and having it help my family. And I just remember it was like an out-of-body experience, just turning around and trying to salvage that moment.
Wow.
So you're on the show. Take us through. What happened?
Yeah, so this is another like whole crazy story, but it's the year is 2007, so this is where the music industry was really starting to convert and try to figure out where it was going to go into this new age of streaming. So enter Making the Band. This was probably one of the last times that artist development was really implemented. because you go back to the 90s, any group or singer that came out, and you could almost even tell, like you're talking about Whitney Houston, Mariah Carey, Boyz II Men, even NSYNC and Backstreet Boys, Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera. These artists came through these camps, these development camps that made them as legendary as they ended up being. It wasn't just by accident. They were really put through these rigorous training camps. And Making the Band basically was that, just in a televised version. So we went through vocal lessons, getting up early, running workouts, straight to choreography, straight to recording studios, back to second workouts, putting us through tests. And then the whole show was basically like a real world reality type of show meets American Idol and meets The Voice, where Diddy now comes in, but instead of where you have a show like The Voice, and at the end of every episode there's going to be a cut, Diddy would show up unannounced at random times, sometimes in the middle of the night while we're sleeping at 3 o'clock in the morning, to wake us up, and it's an impromptu cut where we have to get up out of bed, come downstairs to the living room, and everybody's singing for their lives. It was a very crazy, intense process. They had us box each other. Races, we had to run 5 miles a day. Somebody said something wrong, we had to run 10 miles a day. It was intense. It's kind of bizarre. Basically, like, for me, it was like my college experience. That, to me, when I look back, it was like living in a dorm with a bunch of guys in the city and going through this whole training program. But it was incredible. It was an amazing experience.
So cool, man. So now you're on the show, right? Let's go through the you go through all these levels of competition, and then at the end there's something that happened at the end. Like I watched the show, so like I know what happened, but share with everybody what happened. I mean, this is kind of starts off your professional music career in a way that you probably didn't think about doing, right?
Yeah. So, and especially for me, Making the Band, I grew up singing in groups. I had such a group mentality. And then here we made it down to the finale. However many, 20 of us that moved into the house, we were cut down to 10. And now on this big live finale event, TRL Times Square, Diddy was picking the group. So there's 10 of us left. He's picking 4 or 5, wouldn't even know how many. He ends up calling out 5 names, and my name wasn't called. And I remember in that moment, again, looking down and just like, wow, I made it this far, and am I going back to the warehouse? Is Hofstra going to take me back? Again, it was like that flood of thoughts that just, I didn't even think back then, like, you're on TV, you could probably make something out of this. I didn't even think that way. I was just like, wow, I got cut. And then last minute surprise, Diddy starts jumping on the couch and he's like, this artist didn't make the band because I feel like he'd be better off as a solo artist. Donnie Klang, you're a solo artist on Bad Boy Records. And it was like the weight of the entire world was lifted off my shoulders in that moment. It was surreal. It's still outside now of like my wedding and my 2 daughters being born. That's like in the top 5 of moments that happened in my life.
That's incredible. Now, how did that, so you went from wondering where your life's going. How did that change your life? You're signed to Bad Boy. You're working with Diddy, who at the time is, huge.
Yeah.
How did things change for you?
Yeah, it was, it's crazy because in hindsight, there's a million things that could have been done differently, but I'll play out what ended up happening now in that next year. I'll even give you that first week after we got signed. So that night, everybody went out to celebrate in the city. This was kind of like our first time where the Judge P. Diddy wall got broken down. There's no MTV cameras. And now it's like, this is now our mentor. This is now our boss. This is now the president of the label. This is somebody, especially for me, I grew up in Brooklyn. I was a huge Bad Boy Biggie fan. So it was like, for me, now here I am partying with Diddy to celebrate getting signed to Bad Boy Records. And we were out all night. We go straight to the morning interviews the next morning, Hot 97, Z100. Then we did the whole round of, back then there was TRL, there was BET. We did a bunch of news interviews, radio interviews. And then we did like then they had us go guest star on TRL and we haven't slept at this point. This is like just a whirlwind of a day. And I finally get back and I'm about to go to sleep in the hotel room. It's like 10, 11 o'clock the next night. And one of the guys that made it in the group comes in my room. He's like, "Hey, I have this clothing company. They're doing the Las Vegas fashion convention or whatever, and they want to fly a few of us out. They'll pay us. They'll pay for the flights and hotel and everything." And I was like, "Yeah, definitely. Let me know the details." He's like, "No, we'd be going to the airport right now." And I just remember this suitcase that I packed for making the band. Now I'm in with this suitcase, and I went straight to Vegas. And then all of a sudden, supposed to come home from Vegas, that turned into I went to LA. And this suitcase that I had came with me everywhere for the next like 18 to 24 months. It was a wild ride.
Crazy. When did you notice that after this is all done, you put out an album? You know, I think one of the big hits was like Dr. Love, right? And I remember hearing that. And thinking to myself, like, I'm a big Kiss fan, so of course I was like, what is this guy taking my Kiss song for? You know? But so now the thing's getting some airtime and people saw the show. Like, how did you know that, you know, you became famous? Like, you just walk around, start looking around, and people know who you are. Like, can you describe that?
So it was weird back then because it was hit or miss. It's like, if you watched the show, you thought we were Michael Jackson. If you didn't watch the show, these people had no idea who we were. So we'd be out somewhere. I remember coming back home and I'd be going to the mall or something with my group of friends. And there'd be another group of friends, usually girls, and half of them would be freaking out and the other half would be like, "What are you guys freaking out about?" But I remember one time meeting up with some of my old friends. We went to the mall over here, and we ended up getting security guided out of the mall because the whole place, it was insane. That was one of the crazier Michael Jackson type of experiences for me, was when it started to get a little crazy, and it was before I was taking security around. I didn't even have a management team yet. We were kids, and the way we got signed was so unconventional. We were signed, and now here we are. We're just walking around, and we don't know how to deal with this. I didn't even know how to, like, make a rider or a contract when I was going to do shows. I just remember hearing, like, "Oh, $1,000? I'll take $1,000 to come perform, and you're going to pay for my flight and hotel, and you're giving free VIP at the club after." Like, it was just... It was the Wild West for us when we were going through this process. But I remember that first time when that happened at the mall, that was a crazy experience for me, especially in front of my friends.
So you signed the contract with Bad Boys. Did it live up to being what you thought it would be? You know, where everything seemed as clear as it would be and it worked out the way you wanted it to?
Yeah, I mean, like, from one minute to the next, you're like a signed artist, right? And did you have representation lined up beforehand?
No,
nothing. So, like, how did that work out? You know what I mean? Like, I think, I don't know if you want to speak to that at all, but
I mean, no. So no management, no entertainment attorneys, no PR. We were just wolves in the wild and trying to figure it out as we went. And so contractually, you sign the contract just to audition for the show day one. And that's still the same to this day with The Voice, American Idol. It's like, that's why you almost hear when these people go on these shows, you're signing your life away. It's not really your life, but it's a big portion of your music career. So I remember back then, like I was saying, the industry was transitioning and they weren't making money. There was a lot of cutbacks happening at this point. So I remember, for example, our sign-on bonus, I got $35,000. And I'm a 21-year-old kid. I'm like, $35,000. This is the most I've ever gotten, ever. I make $90 a week to work at this warehouse. Like, $35,000. It was a huge amount of money. And we didn't realize you're not paying taxes on that. because you're technically self-employed. They're not taking taxes off the top. So I was dealing with tax
you're 1099
issues in the years after. No guidance. We had no guidance. And then now at this point, now I'm trying to interview managers and interview attorneys, and at that point, the attorney is just kind of telling you what you already signed, not.
Yeah, you can't change anything now.
Yeah, it just was what it was, and then as far as the management situation, this is a pretty tough part of the story. It was like, so here I was. My mom was trying to be involved as much as she could be. She's somebody I trusted, and she would come to these interviews with me when I'm meeting with managers. And I remember I met with Scooter Braun, who did not manage Justin Bieber yet. He was managing one guy, Asher Roth. He had one big hit, I Love College, back then. And Scooter Braun was managing him. And I remember sitting down with him with my mom. I sat down with somebody named Troy Carter, who a year later ended up managing Lady Gaga. And I was sitting down with a bunch of different people and trying to figure out which one I should go with. And then there was this big day where I was in Diddy's recording studio. And I remember he comes in with the president of the label and two of his big goon bodyguards. And so the way his studio was, there's the control room where kind of like this room I'm sitting in now, it has the whole engineering part of it where the engineer sits and presses record and the faders and all that. And then you have through the window, the big vocal booth. And in his studio, it's in Manhattan, huge vocal booth. But you had to go out and around to go into that room. And he comes in, he presses the talkback button, and I'm in the other room with the microphone with headphones on. And he's like, "Yo, Playboy, did you pick a manager yet?" And I'm like, "Oh, me and my mom have been meeting with people. We didn't pick one yet." And he's like, "You're effing up. You're effing up." He's like, and then he tells the engineer to take a cigarette break. And I just remember now he's coming around, going out that door, around the hallway, into the door in the room where I am. And I just remember hearing these big footsteps coming around. And he's like, Playboy, take those headphones off. He's like, "I gave you too much time to pick a manager." He's like, "You're going to pick one of these two managers." And he basically gave me this ultimatum of I had to pick one of these two managers. And
so a guy he pre-picked, it's going to be in his pocket.
Yep. Two of them.
Wow.
So it was like...
Right. It's a pretend choice.
Yeah. Pretend choice.
Yeah.
And I remember I picked the one guy, and like, don't get me wrong, I had an amazing relationship with him and his whole team. I'm still friendly with some of those people that were on the team, but a lot of the things that I wanted to fight for, it was falling on deaf ears. He wasn't fighting for the things that maybe creatively, musically, or even back then with acting, I had a lot. I was a SAG actor from when I was a little kid, doing commercials and stuff as a baby and a kid. My mom used to bring me to the city for auditions, and I was doing a lot of extra work. I even wanted to incorporate some of that in my career, and the manager just really wasn't fighting for a lot of the things that I was trying to fight for. And then whenever we'd get to a big conference table with Diddy, it was like whatever Diddy said that's the way it was. There was no pushback, no fighting back. That was it. So that was definitely one of the bigger mistakes. Hindsight's 20/20, but
yeah, let's just call it a lesson, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it ended up being I guess, I tend to look at my mistakes as lessons. That way I don't feel like so bad about it. But think about what you learned, and I think, perhaps what you're doing today, we'll get into that in a bit, but like, I think some of that is probably, invaluable to the people you're helping now,
Yeah. Yeah. It feels like it all happened for a reason, and it went the way it went for a reason.
So when did you step away from Bad Boy? And what made you leave that situation and move into a different direction?
So I was doing all that. 2007 was the whole audition year. 2008 and 2009 where we were still filming the show. I was recording the album, traveling a lot during those years. I was touring. I was doing a bunch of shows. We did a big Making the Band tour. And then I was recording at some of the best studios around the country. I remember I was working with The Dream and Tricky out of their spot. It was in Las Vegas, in the Palms. It was all the way up. It was one floor down from like the Playboy Steakhouse or something. It's like you can't even make this up. And then one floor up from there was a club. And I remember we would go to dinner. We'd go back down to the recording studio. Ludacris is walking around. Famous Usher was there. Then you go back up 2 levels and we're going to the club and we're just hanging out. And then we're bringing people with us back down to the recording studio. And it was just crazy. I worked in studios in LA, Miami. And I experienced it. I experienced the whole entire dream, top to bottom. And whenever I was in those studio experiences specifically, I was like a sponge. I was trying to sit over the engineer's shoulder or these big producers. I worked with Timbaland's team. I had an amazing producer that I really, really had a great vibe with. His name was Seven. He was part of Prince's camp. He would bring in Prince's musicians into some of our sessions.
Amazing.
Extremely eclectic guy. He would have doves and fog machines. And I remember it like sounds weird, but that was one of my big inspirations, even still to this day, especially now when I'm passing on the torch and what I know to other artists. It's like you kind of create this mood and this vibe and this energy, and it helps you creatively. It helps you tune in. It's similar to when I tell some young artists when they're going to auditions, dress the part. If you look the part, you're going to feel the part. So it's kind of like same thing in the studio, kind of setting that scene. So I did that through those years. And then 2010 is where things really started to hit this weird rock bottom. And it felt like it happened all at once. I finally moved my mom and me out of our apartment we were living in. And I didn't buy a house. It's a big regret, but it was a weird time back then in 2008. There was a crash and it was a mess.
I remember
Everything
it well.
was a mess. And then, so we were renting a house. And then I remember, I'm like, all right, here we go. This is like kind of like my first big monthly nut that I'm going to be taking on for us. And my mom was a title closer also. So when she lost her job in real estate was dead for a while. Her title company almost shut down. They laid off almost everybody. So I was feeling the brunt of kind of supporting my mom at that time and myself. And then it was like, as soon as I moved into that house, shows stopped, making the band stopped filming, the opportunities stopped rolling in, and I hit this like brick wall. And I remember I was trying to get out of my record deal because I was speaking with somebody from Def Jam who was very interested. They wanted to take what I wanted to do musically and kind of cultivate it. And they ended up, before I was even out of my deal, they on Def Jam's dime, before I signed anything and before I was contractually out of my Bad Boy contract, they sent me down to Atlanta. I stayed there for like 4 months. I made a whole album with these amazing producers down there. And then I came back up. They were like, what's going on with the contract? Are you out yet? My lawyer was saying he's working on it. 2010 turned into 2011. 2011 is when I opened my recording studio because I hit the point of, this is it. What else am I going to do? I need to start figuring out some sort of income. This is not working anymore. And I was stuck in my record deal until about 2013. And the whole Def Jam thing fell off the table. And that was it. By that point, I was kind of full-fledged gung-ho into running my business.
So were you in conversation with Simmons? Is that who you were talking to down there?
It was an A&R under him back then.
Yeah, okay. All right, cool. So they saw something in you and they wanted to invest in you, but it was really just a matter of getting out of your current contract, and that didn't happen.
Yeah.
All right, so now you've stopped doing music, like recording, and you decide to open a recording studio. How did that transpire? Like, I know, Dennis and I decided we're going to do a podcast, and I knew nothing about podcasting, and I just went to Guitar Centers and bought a bunch of gear and YouTubed how to put it all together, and voila, here we are. But I can imagine that you knew how to record because you'd done some of that before. You did it, and I guess now 2 albums, really. I mean, one didn't get released. Did that album that with Def Jam?
No,
obviously
never got released. Yeah, no.
Yeah. So how do you move into the arena of recording, and why did you decide to do that?
Yeah, so I ended up I mean, actually, for a long time, when I was still doing interviews throughout the 2010s, it was like I kind of used to flub this story. I've gotten too old now. It's just the actual truth of this story is I ended up reconnecting with my friend Matt, who I used to sing with, because he owned his own construction company. He was doing construction at the time. This is late 2010, early 2011. And I needed work. And this was like, what am I going to do? Am I going to be a waiter or work at a Home Depot? Like, what am I going to do? And I was still kind of actively getting recognized by people. I didn't know how to cultivate that into something bigger. I was stuck in contracts, management contracts. I couldn't really make moves for myself. Social media was still right before the big boom of how you could really make moves on Instagram, TikTok, and all that. So I was stuck. I felt stuck, and I got in touch with Matt so that I could work with him where it was kind of more behind the scenes. We were just doing private jobs in private homes, and I would make money, whatever, per day that I was working with him. And then fast forward now, I was working with him for about 7-8 months, and his wife owned a dance studio out here in Long Island, and she was moving locations. So Matt was doing all the work for her new location. So I remember we were renovating this whole place. It was a Chinese food restaurant. There was grease all over the place. It was disgusting. But it was a lot of fun. It was fun working with your best friend that you grew up with. We would sing together, just blast music. But I remember there was this little upstairs loft in her space that she wasn't going to use. And me and Matt were like, we should put a studio up here, not even really thinking, what is this going to be? Is it a business? Is it just a place for us to go and hang out and make music? And when we asked Carolyn, that's Matt's wife, Carolyn, it was her space. She was like, absolutely. She's like, does that mean you guys are going to get your stuff out of the house? And at the time, they had 2 young kids, 2 babies, and she was like, you guys can't be blasting music in here till midnight, 1 o'clock anymore. She's like, yeah, get the stuff out of the house. So we take all our equipment, we move it in there, and we just kind of on a whim opened up, not even thinking it would be a business. It was just going to be a space. We didn't even know at that point.
Like a hangout space where you guys could go do your thing. Yeah. So then you decide to monetize the space and have people come in and use your gear, right? And then you're the engineer. Are you doing all the production for these people too at this time? Or are you just, engineering?
Yeah. So what it turned into was, so ironically, this was probably like within a week of us building out that upstairs room. So that's also why the studio is called the Loft Sound Studio, because we started off up in this little loft. So ironically, within a week, we used to play basketball at this spot near the studio. And before basketball, we would go into the sushi restaurant and sit at the bar and have a quick dinner. And the bartender there had a daughter that sang, and she recognized me from making the band. And she was like, oh, my daughter sings. And we were like, we own a recording studio. And she's like, what's your prices? And we were like, so it all started with that girl, our first kind of client that we had. And we definitely evolved our business with social media. So in the beginning, we very quickly realized we also had to pick up videography. That was going to be a huge component for us, because obviously,
and it's hard,
kids can come in and record. Yeah, people come in and record. They're going to need some sort of visual to it to be able to put it on. Back then, it was just YouTube, right before Instagram. And we started posting some of her stuff on YouTube. It led to the next person that came in. And then the third person that came in ended up being, still to this day, the biggest for us. So we had a girl named Madison Beer. She's now very huge. She's got like 30 million plus followers across her platforms. So she came in with her parents. Her dad actually was the owner of that sushi restaurant that we used to go to. And he comes in with her. He's like, oh, my daughter goes to School of Rock. She's taking lessons, but she doesn't really like rock music. She likes more pop music. And we were like, that's what we do. And he was like, I would love to, get her coached in that genre. So we were like, of course, that's what we do. So this girl, she was 12 years old back then. We started coaching her. She definitely had the it factor. She was a very pretty girl. Her voice, she needed work vocally, but she just didn't hold back. She had no reservation. She wasn't afraid in front of anybody, no nerves. She would just stand up and belt her voice out, for better or worse. And we started coaching her and developing her, and we started putting videos out on YouTube, and she ended up getting discovered by Justin Bieber. And then,
oh, so cool.
Within a couple months, she's signed to actually Scooter Braun and Justin Bieber. And now she's still doing all of her videos with us. And Justin Bieber was sharing everything she did. And we had our logo, our website on every video we were doing for her. And we were getting basically free advertisement from Justin Bieber as he shared her. And then as she grew,
fantastic,
we got a bunch of people wanting to come in for us to help do what we were doing for her, for them. So it was
that's
huge,
amazing,
huge
man.
for us. Yeah.
So it basically grew fairly organically, because of that one connection, and then, and then Bieber to bump her up, and you guys end up riding that train too. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Like, it's not something you thought. And if you think back, right, you went through all those things. You went through, making the band, having the deal with Diddy, and then, perhaps, Russell Simmons doing something with you, and then none of that happening. You must have gotten to a point where, like, you get down about it. Yeah. But now, if you look back in retrospect, it's almost like you had to go through all of that to be where you are now.
100%.
So Donnie, when you and I met, you were really making moves with a group of young ladies called the Janes.
Yeah.
And they were on a meteoric rise. And talk about that and where that is and what happened.
Yeah, so we were in that original loft inside the dance school for about 2.5 years, and then we very quickly grew out of that space. So we moved to a bigger space. We were kind of really figuring out exactly what our business was, and it was artist development. We were filling that void for beginners to advanced recording artists that wanted to try to take their career to the next level. And we started establishing relationships with a bunch of the casting directors and producers of some of these big shows, American Idol, The Voice. Back then there was X Factor, America's Got Talent. We helped a bunch of people get on those shows through the years, and I think it really stamped us down and gave us our credibility of we kind of know what we're doing here. And then we were out with one of our artists. At the time, we were representing a solo male artist, and we were out in LA shopping around for different deals for him. Nothing ever panned out, but we ran into Scooter Braun. And this was 2014, I want to say. And we had the idea that we wanted to put together either a girl group or a boy band, because that's our background. That's our history. We love a cappella and harmonies and, being able to just stand up and sing, no music. So that was, we were about to start that project, and we're out in LA. We run into Scooter Braun. We reconnected over all these stories of when me and my mom had met him back in the day, and then how he signed the girl Madison. We were the guys behind developing her, and so we connected with him, and he's like, what are you guys working on now? And we said, we have a girl group. And we did not have a girl group. So we fly home, and we very quickly put together 5 young girls that were just recording at our studio at the time. And horrible situation. We put them together so fast. We sent him a picture of the 5 of them without any music or anything yet. And then he's like, amazing, I want to hear them. Send me something. So we're trying to put it together as fast as possible. Meanwhile, we're dealing with these 5 kids. All of a sudden, the 5 parents are involved, and they're like, what's going on here? Like, there's no contract. What's happening? So then we go to get contracts together. All through this process, we're putting YouTube videos together for them. We're singing some of the notes and having them kind of lip sync it. 2 of the girls were really good, so they were leading up some of it, but the videos start blowing up. I remember one video got almost 1 million views, and now all of a sudden, the parents are fighting us on the contract that we were trying to sign from day one, and then they hire. These stories are just so unbelievable. they hire this attorney, Debbie White, who was P. Diddy's attorney when I was dealing with him during my bad boy days. And she's like, fancy seeing you again. And she's us apart. She tries to fight us on every single thing we were doing. And then we got to the point we were just like, we had to walk away from it. And then not only that, we were switching out members all the time because the girls couldn't get along with each other. So Dennis, the 5 girls that you met ended up being a little bit more polished. We found people from different areas of the Northeast, not friends from high schools locally. And then a few of the girls were also a little bit older. We had some like 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-olds, and then there was one younger girl in the group. And it was so much better. The vibe was so much better. The attention was so much better. The focus, the talent vocally, all 5 of them were able to hold their own. And then that was really our big project for 2015, almost straight up to the pandemic. And then we had a few close encounters that happened with them. We had a huge meeting with this guy, Vincent Herbert, who was also responsible for Lady Gaga's career. And he had a big label underneath Sony. So Vincent Herbert, if you guys remember Tamar Braxton, Tony Braxton's sister, Vincent Herbert was married to her, and he was also putting a lot of the label budget into her project. But the project wasn't really going anywhere. And then we had a deal offered from Sony through him for the girls, and it was a $1 million record deal. Advanced up front. Some of it was going to have to go on the back end towards marketing, but some of it was going in the girls' pockets and me and Matt's pocket to put more time and energy and just focus on that project. And we're in Sony, the big morning. They're like, bring a camera guy. We want to film this. We're sitting in the lobby in Sony, and the meeting's supposed to be at 10. It's pushed to 10:30, 10:45, 11. Then we see the president of the company walk out, and we're like, what's going on here? And then Vince Herbert comes out, and he's like, guys, meet me back at my hotel. I'll explain what's going on. And another long story short, Vincent Herbert got fired from Sony while we were sitting in the lobby waiting to sign a record deal with the girls. And now Monday morning comes, and we start speaking to our attorneys, start speaking to Sony's attorneys, and they're like, no, that deal is going to be off the table now. That was supposed to have been led by Vincent Herbert. He's no longer with the company. And that's it. And that was it. That was very tough, especially on the girls.
You can't make that up, man.
Yeah, it was crazy. And they had a few other encounters, and they were on America's Got Talent. They never ended up airing their portion of the show. It was a few rough things that happened, and it just ended up leading to us kind of just walking away from it.
So those girls must have been crushing that day, like when that happened, right? They're about to sign a deal, and then the guy gets fired. I mean, like, that's crazy.
I remember the week before, we went into the city to meet with Vince to kind of talk about what the deal was going to be. And actually that first time we went in there, the girls had to sing for everybody. They killed it. It was amazing. And I remember we went back to this parking garage and everybody was like, this is it. This is happening. And then I remember we superstitiously wanted to park in the same parking lot the next week. And I remember just the complete opposite feeling when all of us went walking into this parking lot after. It was like gloomy. Everybody was crying, and it was horrible.
Man, crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you're right there, and then it just disappears. So
yeah.
And then obviously the pandemic hit, and Loft is booming. You have artists coming in and out. What does a huge future hold for Loft, Donnie Klang? And what's coming in the latter end of 2024 into 2025?
Yeah, I think the blessing in disguise throughout all that was obviously the lessons that we were able to take from it, but also, I was putting so much time and energy and effort into the group, and the business was slowly slipping away. It was like now here I was when I finally was stepping back from that project, and I'm like, whoa, our numbers were bigger when we were in the little 8x10 room above the dance school. I'm like, we can't be doing that. It's like we should be doing, and then that's where we ended up starting. We started the Pop Star Party, which is now probably more than half of our annual revenue comes from this incredible birthday party. I'm obviously biased, but I wish I could have did it when I was a kid, because obviously I loved music back then, and the party is super cool. We give younger kids the pop star experience. We show them what it's like. They get a chance to sing in a professional recording studio. We have a big room with a stage inside. They perform on stage. We film a music video with them, and then they do the standard like pizza and cake and all that. We have a red carpet. They take photos. And it's just such a cool experience. And we end up having a lot of kids come back a year or two later, because we also do like transitions with the music videos where they were a 6-year-old kid and now they're 8, or they had their party here when they were 7 and now they're 10. So, and everybody raves about the party. The party it's really, really awesome. So that's a huge part of our business, which I probably wouldn't have even started if I was focusing so much on, representing artists. And then I put more focus for me personally here, just developing artists that I'm working with. And then we ended up, so I don't know if it's like this in every state, but in New York State, special needs kids and adults could get reimbursed by the state for certain services. So we have a few special needs kids and adults that come to us, and they're some of the most amazing people that I work with. Their hearts are just like huge. You feel their positive energy and their love for music and singing. And they come in here and it's considered a therapeutic service. And their parents even tell us, when they walk out of here, they're like completely different than who they were in the morning or the days before they were here. And they get their services reimbursed by the state of New York for it being considered a therapeutic service. So we have that whole part of our business. And now we've been expanding. My sister's been working here, and we're hoping now one of our next goals is we just started really researching our nearest, I can't even call them a competitor because they're way bigger, but the most similar business to ours is School of Rock, and they have franchises all over the country. I think they actually went international. So we started researching, some of their formula, what they're using for their CRM and their website and all that. And we started implementing some of those same things here and using their same calendar systems and stuff with our coaches. And so that would be one of the next steps. Is we also spoke with a franchise consultant about what would we have to do in order to open up a franchise, or start franchising. So that's very obviously cool. the big dream for us. It's super fun. We had interns here, and one of the interns finished up his summer internship last night, and I did an interview with him, and he's like, "What's your title here?" And I'm like, honestly, man, it's kind of fun. Like, I feel like I'm a kid sometimes here. I'm like, my title is kind of whatever I say it is. Like, one day I want to be I'm a music producer. It's like, that's what I'm doing. Or I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a CEO. I'm like, we have a lot of fun here, and it's awesome. It's very, very fulfilling. Even though my personal music career didn't go where I wanted it to, I feel like it all happened for a reason.
100%, man.
Donnie, you have unbelievable experiences, and the highs and lows, and you've dealt with some people that maybe not led you in the right direction, to say it, politely.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to a young artist aspiring to get into the industry, knowing what you know my next part is that something that you share with the artists that you develop, which really seems to be a passion of yours.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, that is, I think, one of the reasons why our business has been successful is I think people feel how genuine we are, especially in the music industry. You get a lot of sharks. You get a lot of people telling you what to do. You hear tons of different advice. Who likes it? Who doesn't like it? What should you change? It's like the one consistent thing I try to implement to everybody I work with and anybody I give advice to is, I think the business and branding part of being an artist is huge. These artists, you have to be an entrepreneur. And if you don't have that mentality, you should put people around you that do have that mentality, because at the end of the day, it is a business. And a lot of people are creative. And this is how I used to be. This is why we didn't have paperwork with Madison Beer or with a bunch of the first few people that came to us. I wasn't thinking business first. I was thinking creative,
art
fun.
first.
Let's vibe out. You have to have both. You can't lose your creativity to the business side, and you also can't lose your business side to your creativity.
Good advice, man. And I'd like to probably add, once you have a product out there, you put a project together, you have an album, you have, even videos or whatever, that's just the first step. Like, so getting the record deal back in the day, that was just the first step, right? Because now you have to go and sell all the candy bars, like the kid knocking on the doors and getting people to buy it or download it, right?
Yeah,
and I think a lot of artists
even harder today.
Forget about that part.
Yeah,
way harder today, right?
Yeah.
I mean, for sure. In a lot of ways, it's easier because you can do it organically yourself at first. But in a lot of ways, the backing of the big, record companies is kind of washed up a little bit.
Yeah,
or it's harder to get, right?
It's a catch-22 because it's way more accessible now. Whether that means recording yourself or distributing music yourself, it's very accessible. And then obviously you have the instant gratification platforms and the short form platforms that everybody's attention spans are getting shorter and shorter, and you have to be on them if you're trying to make it. But it's like, obviously TikTok, our business has evolved with all of these social media pages. I remember at one point we were helping people make 6-second videos for Vine. And that was what we were doing basically for one whole year. And then Instagram released video and we were focusing on 15-second videos and then 30-second videos. And then TikTok blew up, and now we're pretty much trying to help people. And now what's happened is it once again feels like the Wild West, because this is a huge question we get from everybody. It's like, should I focus on TikTok, Reels, YouTube Shorts? Like, where should I put my time, my energy? And it's become such a crapshoot, and then people are overthinking their content, and should it be really overproduced, or should it be natural, or what's the trend this week? And it changes every week, and what's the new hashtag? And it's like, it's gotten so kind of like oversaturated and convoluted that I think people are losing sight of, this is what I tell everybody. I'm like, just do this because you love to do it. And then the content you make the content because you love to have this music that you just created and you want to put it out there. And whatever that means is what it means. Like, we have this whole professional studio, but we have some people come in, and if we have somebody that has this incredible voice, sometimes we don't put them behind the microphone. We just put up the camera and we shoot and film and we coach them through it live like that. So it just depends on where they're trying to go.
Very cool. Donnie, thank you so much, man. I mean, I'm very impressed at your story. I think it's awesome that you've kind of come through full circle, and the way you evolved. I think it's awesome. I think it's an absolute testament to someone who found obstacles, overcame them, and ended up on top in a way maybe that you didn't think you would be, but like you couldn't be where you are without all of that. You know what I mean? It's really, really awesome. And thank you so much for your time and coming in and sharing your story.
Yeah, no, of course. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Dennis. Happy birthday again. It's always good to take a step back too and like relive the story and the journey.
Well, Donnie, one of the things I think about, and Bob and I talk about this quite a bit, is in life, and you're a perfect example of this, you could have given up when you wanted to go to Def Jam, didn't work out the way you wanted it to with the Janes. You in life, and I say this to all of our viewers, you have the opportunity to write your own story. And Donnie Klang's, you're living proof of that. You are writing your own story. And I know both of us here look forward to see how that story continues to unfold. And it's nothing but success. And when you're curating and developing talent the way you are, you're always going to be making change in the lives of others. And the other side, I've been a special ed teacher for 30 years. that program you do with this individual with special needs is tremendous. Great work.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Yeah, this is a good one, Dennis. I enjoyed it thoroughly,
Unbelievable.
And Donnie's an amazing guest, and I'd love to have you on again sometime and kind of dig a little deeper there. There's so many things we didn't touch on today. When I was doing my research, we could have gone into some deeper places, but we want to keep it, within. We tend to, with the podcast sites, they like the long ones, but the YouTube, they like to stay on for a few minutes and move on, So, but anyway, Donnie, thank you so much, man, and hopefully we can swing around again. And next time, Dennis and I are down toward the city, we'll have to meet up in real life, as they say. And Dennis, what else you got to say? Happy birthday, man! And
thank you so much. It's a go time, guys.
It is.
Great job, man.